gave Vince the confidence to be like, all right, I'm not going to be like blindsided on this show. I could come and have a little fun. And so you booked Vince on, which I think is, other than Steve Austin at the time, probably the biggest get you could get from WWF. He was the biggest star.
That was my opinion. Yeah. And also, he said during the segment, he's like, anything we should stay away from? And he goes, hey man, ask me whatever you want. So he almost, even with the Bob Costas thing, I don't think he probably enjoyed being blindsided. So
I was going to say, like he seemed in a surprisingly good mood. Like, this is not the type of Vince McMahon we see on interview shows. At the time, he would be interviewed on Real Sports or whatever, and it was always a very confrontational interview, whereas this is just for goofs. And he seemed very willing to go along with any joke that Conan made, even at his expense. He was there to have fun, which I was very intrigued by, because, like I said, this isn't the side of Vince you see on public interviews very much.
Yeah, and in fact, there was a little bit, even talking to him at the time, like, I don't know how to put it, but he was like, well, this is odd. No controversy, not me, like, oh, okay. It was a little different, because usually, it was like all his appearances through the years were like, steroid controversy, Bob Costas, what about this? Right. You know what I mean? This was just like, hey, you're just, you're just this, American personality icon,
Yeah, he was promoting a main event, I believe. It was like around King of the Ring, and him and Shane, for control of the company against Steve Austin, was what he was promoting. So did you request Vince? Did he make himself available? Do you remember how the booking came together?
Well, I think we requested him, and it didn't matter because that would have already been established. But I think I was like, yeah, you got to have Vince. You should have him on, because I was of the mindset too, like, hey, this Austin Vince thing is incredible. And I kind of was in the mindset, the more you get your family on, the better. These shows are 3 hours. There's plenty of wrestling, but this is the stuff that's making it like really intriguing. When he came on, I kind of was real cavalier with like talking to him, and even using the language about this is over, that's not over, which at the time, not everyone would do. And, so he's like, oh, this guy's a little wizened up. Like, now it doesn't matter. But I remember saying, like, you got to get your family on. The more you get your family on, the better. This whole corporate thing, and, it's working great. I'm telling you, it's, I would talk to him like that as I'm producing the segment. And then, just for fun. And I was actually leaving the show in a couple weeks and moving to California. And so I just left it at that. Great segment. And then lo and behold, a couple days later, he calls me and like, my girlfriend at the time, like, Vince McMahon, and hello, pal. And like, holy smokes. So he's like, yeah, why don't you come down? Want to come down to the Titan Towers for like a meeting? And I was like, yeah. And it was funny because I was just so intrigued, like, what does this mean? And, I thought, like, I guess it might be a job offer. I didn't even think it through, but I thought,
you were
like,
leaving Conan at the time, right? Like, you're already finishing up on Conan.
I was finishing up. I had plans, all the plans to move to California, like ending the lease on my place, all this stuff. And so I went to his office, and then again, I boobed into it by going like, well, just talk to him cavalier about stuff like, wow, look at the office. This office is crazy, beautiful office, Titan Towers.
This is the old Titan Towers in Stanford, right? You just showed up. And...
Yeah. And so I said, well, I got to tell you, I've got plans to move to California, whatever, but, I don't want to waste your time, but I just came out here to, see your office, frankly, all apologies. I didn't, and he's like, how about this? How about you come out to a couple shows and I'll pay you $1,000 a night and you'll do some consulting. See what you think. Tell me what you think. And just like,
now, $1,000 a night, that seems like, for 99, it's good money.
Dude, fucking fabulous right now. Are you kidding? Also, the way it happened, too, it was like, come out and see the show and we'll meet afterwards. Tell me what you think. Okay, fuck.
Yeah.
Fucking $30. I'd do it today. Anyways, but the sexy thing was he had this big book, that was all handwritten, a ledger book. Let's see where we are next week, and and remember the next couple weeks. And I remember going like, oh, I think I'd like to go to Birmingham, Alabama, and then it was like a Sunday, and then Monday, it was a Monday Raw. I can't remember exactly. So I went to a couple of shows, and they had, this was pre 9/11, so they cut first class tickets right there in the office. They printed them up. You know, he had his big office, and then his executive assistant like, here you go.
The
so
dot
I got
matrix
printer.
Yeah,
I got two checks, and well, actually, they had some kind of, I guess, the gimmick that you'd have in the travel agency, some special, you know, or you know.
Like a ticket printer, basically.
Yeah, the ticket printer. So I had the tickets, like everything. Here you go. I'm like, wow. I walked out of the office like I got 2 tickets to, you know.
Was your hotel and like travel, all the travel was taken care of? Did they book hotels?
Everything. Yeah, absolutely. And which sometimes pisses off people on the road, like, what the hell? I've been here 20 years, and they, you know, I had to get my own shit. But so, anyways, you kind of it was kind of odd because I'd show up and I'd be like with Vince in his office, and you know, and people were kind of like,
so did you show up to the venue alone or with Vince, like when you got there? Actually,
with Vince, because I went to the airport and was on the same flight. It was a commercial flight, same flight with Shane and Vince and everything. So I roll in with them, and then you go into, you know, every time you go to a venue, you know, they have the, you know, the Xerox is like cafeteria this way, trainer, office, kayfabe room, Vince's office. You know, they take over, you know, whatever arena you're in, and so I go into Vince's office.
What's the kayfabe room?
Kayfabe is a traditional room where, you know, for years, locker rooms were separate. Heels and baby faces didn't mix, you know, even outside, you know, that's a big rule. So there was always a room, the kayfabe room, where people would go in to discuss the finishes. It always remained there, but it was traditional. I don't think it was necessarily used all the time, or at times it was, you know, because sometimes this would be discussed in the shower or on the side, or, you know, by a anvil case or wherever in the hallway, you know, didn't really matter. But I think it was a traditional thing, which I always appreciated, kayfabe room. And sometimes it's just like, oh, it's a broom closet, or it's a, you know, depending on your arena, you know, how many available rooms are or what have you. So it was an odd thing to me to be able to just like be in his office, you know. It was a lot of like, who's this guy? Is he dating Stephanie? Is he some weird relative, or, you know, who the fuck is he? And then they met like Russo. Even Russo's like, oh, you know, who's this guy? And then, you know, said, oh, he works for Conan and he's here. So all that is like, oh.
Yeah, like how did Vince McMahon introduce you to Russo where like, oh, he's not trying to take your job or anything. He's just here to help out. You know, like how were you?
Frankly, I here's the thing. You just hit the ground running so fast. I can't remember. And I don't think there was any kind of like, you know, official protocol about happening. Suddenly, like, you're just here. You're just with him. And then I'm sitting up in the side table, you know, in the production meeting. There's always a production meeting that's around 10. So they have a table set up, you know, and then a bunch of like long tables where agents, Jim Ross, refs, whoever needs to, crew to be in there. And, you know, Vince, Kevin Dunn, whoever is up at the front, Shane, you know, laying out the Vince Russo laying out the matches and
so this is right. So you come in right into the production meeting, or was there some?
There's some, you know, there's some meandering around before and people coming in, and I'm just kind of like, holy smokes! Well, there's, you know, there's the wrestlers, and oh, you know, just kind of soaking it all in. And you see like, oh, there's, you know, the seamstress, and there's the hair person, and there's, you know, someone getting their hair dyed blonde, you know, and here's the Magic Man with all like
the machine, you know, is just gimmick. Working as you're walking through it. Yeah. The
machine is just working, and you just see it, and there's nowhere real. It's all hallways. There's people leaning up against the walls, and, you know, and stuff like that. And usually, like, you know, at the time there was a doctor on who might be doing some chiropractic stuff with someone, or just, you know, all kinds of this business. So you're just soaking it in, and you're always kind of like, oh, there's no place to really sit or stand, or, you know, where you're going. And so I'm basically just along for it, and I wasn't like formally introduced in a meeting or anything, and it was kind of like hitting the ground running. And once the production meeting happens, you just kind of quickly realize like, oh, here's it goes. Like, okay, we're here, and welcome to, you know, Birmingham, Alabama. We're gonna have our shot of the arena. Then we'll have our intros with the announce team. We'll go here, and our first match is gonna be this, and so is gonna go over, and then we're gonna go here for an interview, and you just kind of lay it out like that.
Are you marking out, or are you like, you know, I've been in Hollywood for years now. Like what is your internal composure?
I'm marking out, but, you know, it'd be absolutely ridiculous to demonstratively mark out. That would be dumb.
Right.
So
You don't want
I'm
to show
practicing. Yeah, I'm practicing stoicism while simultaneously marking out. You know what I mean? Because I'm kind of just like, okay, and just to be professional too. I'm kind of like, well, I'm paid here to give what I think. So I'm just kind of like. And then I'm very fascinated with just also like the TV production of it, you know, going to the truck, which is very much like going to the truck during NFL or something and meeting that director and, you know, all that kind of like just the, you know, the fundamental stuff of it. There's just tons to soak in. I'm hyper fascinated and marking out. Every level was really great. You know, if nothing else, it was super interesting. But and then it'd be like, oh hell, there's Triple H. Oh, you know, like.
And the production itself, I'm sure, was like significantly larger than on Conan, right? Conan is just one tiny room. This is a whole arena they have to.
Absolutely. There's, you know, you're coming in the tunnel, there's semis, you know, and what was it, like 10 semis at the time. So it's kind of like, I guess explain, it's like being on the road with a rock band because there's rigging, you know, and they set up the Titantron and there's all this in the ring and that kind of stuff. And like being a sporting event because the truck and the switching is very similar to like you'd see at baseball or football or something. That's how they dealt with the mobile truck. So they have that, and then you're doing a show. Also, you're writing, so it's like being, you know, a variety show with a sporting event meets like a rock band on tour, all in one.